We're not going to be doing any more clicking, I don't think, in this half hour. I'm here with Ken Goldman. Hello, everyone. It's great to be back at FiRe. I'm sitting up here in the firing line, as it is, as you might call it, with Ken Goldman, who was CFO at Yahoo, the last CFO at Yahoo, I think it's fair to say. Ken, he's now president at Hillspire. Ken, can you just give us the scope of how you came to Yahoo and what you're doing now, just the before and after, before we get into what happened during?
I get to sit down here. Interesting enough, like all the jobs I've ever gotten, I got a cold call from Marissa asking if I'd be interested in joining. And like a lot of jobs I've changed, it occurred during the summer when I tend to take a little time off in Maui, windsurfing and kite sailing. And so I came back and we talked and met some board members. That's effectively how I came to the company. I did not, interesting enough, I knew of her, but hadn't worked with her in the past. And the reality is just a quick summary, you know, I have been doing this for something like 40 years in terms of financial work and 30 years as CFO. And so I've done a number of quarters. And she, and like I think, and I always push this to people I talk to, you know, she had gotten my name through a lot of folks, bankers, lawyers, and so forth that I'd worked for. And in that, and I always remind people that's really the best job opportunities, best board opportunities come through your own network and references and so forth. And you know, I think the fact that I have an engineering and a business degree helped a bit in terms of coming there.
Did Yahoo need a new CFO? Who was your predecessor?
I don't know if they need. That's a hard question. It's so big. I don't know if anyone needs a new CFO. I think there was I think Marissa, when she came in, she looked at remaking part of the team. I think I've learned over the years as a CFO has gone from sort of a backwater function to now a very senior role, and it's sort of one of these roles where the CEO looks at the CFO as one that's objective and has eyes and ears for what's going on in the company. And so it becomes very, crucial to how they think about it, because you think about a CEO really, other than board, has really no one to go to, per se. So the CFO really, if you do it well, has no axe to grind. It just calls it the way they see it. And so, I and 3 or 4 others were hires that she made very early on. I like to say that I was the only one that actually stayed through the full 5 years that she hired. So it worked out well, and we today have a phenomenal relationship, and I really enjoyed working with her.
What was the atmosphere like at Yahoo when you arrived in 2012?
Well, there's a few things. I mean, that I always like to say. Everyone takes a lot for granted, but the reality is that the culture was really tough. It really wasn't very conducive to what was going on in the Valley. We were very different. You couldn't hire. People were leaving. You couldn't acquire companies because no one wanted to work there. In terms of new companies, we just had a non-internet culture. A number of things that we changed in transformation. Really, Marissa changed. From the point of view of transparency, having weekly all-hands meetings. From the point of view of, you might say this is nothing, but having free food, which tends to be a cost of doing business if you're an internet company in the Valley. Getting everyone, people didn't have smartphones, people didn't have latest laptops, getting people the latest equipment, getting people...
people didn't have smartphones at Yahoo.
No, we had old phones. People don't know that actually Yahoo, when we left, was one of 3 global companies with over 1 billion users, over 650 million mobile users. So there's a lot of things that people didn't really see in Yahoo. But the biggest thing in the culture is we went from a situation where we had like 5 CEOs in 3 years to a CEO who was very, very well respected internally, and a CEO who was especially respected by the engineering community. And you can't run a technology company, particularly in the Valley, unless you come from an engineering background and you get the confidence of the engineering community and the product group. And that was something that was very, very important. That wasn't the case with the prior CEOs.
What did she, well, I think it's well known what Marissa Mayer brought, right? She started buying things in 2012, 2013. She was trying to kind of reinvent what Yahoo was for.
Yeah, I mean, that's true to some extent. We were behind in talent. We had, you get the mobile generation, people talk about how Facebook changed. We had like 25 people when we got there in a mobile engineering group, 25 people. And so the only way you can bootstrap when you're behind is to acquire people. And so we did Aqua Hires, whatever term you want to use. So we did a number of very small acquisitions. Again, remember, I talked to my predecessor in BD, and he said we could not acquire companies. No one would want to even talk to us. It wasn't a question of money, just people had no desire to go to Yahoo. Well, it was like some 30-something Aqua Hire companies that we acquired for relatively very low amounts. And basically the way we did it is we basically made sure most of the consideration went to the employees, very little to the investors, because again, these were companies that frankly had great people, but really didn't have a company. It was more of a products. And so we hired or acquired a number of those, and that's really how we bootstrapped our company. It's really how a number of top executives came to the company is through these Aqua Hires. You know, I can think of mail, I can think of mobile and so forth. I can think of search. These people came from the companies that we acquired. It turns out about half of the people when I left at the company were new people from the company that we had brought on that weren't there when we started.
Do you look back at that acquisition streak as a successful period, though? Because
I think most of it, yes. I think the one I think we would probably, and this is all public, we might do differently is Tumblr was obviously, it was a great property, great engagement, but how to monetize it was not as easy as we had thought. And so I think to give fairness to things that work well, things that don't work so well, it was a great property, one of the top properties in the social and one of the core platforms of the company when we left. But the fact is how to monetize that kind of content, given the nature of that content and given the user base, probably wasn't certainly wasn't as easy as we had thought. But that really was the only one of a major nature that we acquired. We acquired some metrics companies and so forth that have all done very, very well. So I would say of all the acquisitions we did, that was the only one that stands out that probably was challenging.
The monetizing strategy then, I mean, you're the CFO. How are you setting about turning things around? Because Yahoo had been kind of in retreat, right?
Well, I think the reality is we came up with this nomenclature called Mavens, Mobile Video Native Social. And it turns out about $2 billion of our revenue when we left, of our $5 billion came from basically new initiatives that didn't exist when we started. And so we made a major effort at really restarting those products. I think we killed something like 150 products. One of the problems and challenges for Yahoo over the years, we acquired a number of properties, and they became somewhat dormant, but they sort of still stayed there, and we had a number of people still working there. And so we looked to eliminating a lot of those. Another thing I always think of is really important. We did a lot of benchmarking, of our costs and capital structure and so forth. Brought in some outside help to help there, which helped both in, again, product selection, but also helped getting our cost structure in line.
You don't want to talk about the hack in 2013.
So you're going to bring it up anyway.
I'm going to bring it up. I'm just going to, full disclosure, that this is not something we're going to be talking about directly. But I mean, that does affect the mood and the spirit in the company, doesn't it? I mean, you were talking
interesting enough, I mean, here's the, I've been, you can't be, let's say it this way, you can't have done what I've done for 30 years and not getting a bunch of lawsuits over the years and class actions and all this good fun. This is one case I was fortunate that I was cordoned off because I did not have a need to know, and it wasn't in the financial area, so I fortunately had very little to do with it, but I would say, as I look around, this is more of a generic comment, and certainly cybersecurity is a major area. For those of you involved with companies, it's a major board, not necessarily, it's not really an audit committee function as much as it's become a board activity to double check it. I know in all the boards I'm involved, it's a major subject that we review constantly. You look around, I can't think of a major area that hasn't been hacked, whether it's the government, we just saw one in South Korea now, whether it's a credit rating agency, whether it's the government in terms of voting. I always remind people that the good news about Yahoo, we were not a bank, we were not a credit card company. We were not a credit rating agency, so the kinds of data that we had is very different from a lot of the companies that you see being hacked. The SEC's been hacked, so I think it's one of those things that's it's a real life issue, and it's something that we have to take very seriously. And it's one of those things that's, I've been involved in a number of security companies. I'm on a security board right now, and it's the old, reaction to reaction to, so forth, and so you have to be proactive, but then there's reaction to everything.
Yeah, I suppose that's my point. I don't want to talk about it directly, but it's a crisis management thing, and you're in a board situation, and it must affect morale. It must affect attitudes to how you move forward after that event.
Well, I would say the interesting thing is because of what I just said, and because of the nature of the hack for us versus some of the other companies, I don't know that it necessarily affected morale. I think what affected morale a lot more was where the company was going, where we're going to be sold and not sold, and so forth. The hack was really the province of, because it was cordoned off, was really the province of very, very few people, and didn't really change how we went about our day-to-day business for 99% of the employees.
So you're talking about what you learned at Yahoo. There you were. You'd come in from a very different background, and you were taking over a company that obviously had a series of challenges. It was changing its identity pretty rapidly over this period, and ultimately got bought out. That was a learning curve, right, for you?
Yeah, I would, say I've been giving a chat on this, and there's a few things I would say, and this is really the essence of it, and I follow it very closely, and so I would say, and I'm going to come back to. Let me just give you some quick ones, and then I'll come back to it. Transformations do take longer many times than expected, so setting the expectations, with the right time frame early on is something that we could have done better. Boards matter and alignment matters. I'll come back to that. Selecting your management teams, being much more careful on that is very, very important. And controlling the PR and IR, very, very important. So let me go through that a little bit. Transformations are tough, particularly in the public world, where everyone's watching you and so forth, and your degrees of freedom not as well as in a private company. And I think had we gone private, which I would have loved to have done, frankly, it could have been a lot easier. You see today, one of the things, a number of trends going on today, but you see the incredible wealth of funds in private equity firms, and that's because many companies would prefer to be in the private round. You look at the activism, which I'll come back to. Obviously, there's a big, P&G went through it yesterday in a board vote. We'll see where that all ends up, ultimately in the proxy. Supposedly they lost, the other guys lost, but we'll see. But I think that is cast a pall on a number of companies being public. We have today, I don't think people know this in this room, we have today about half as many companies public as we had 20 years ago. We have about 3,600 companies public. Today, 20 years ago, it was over 7,000. There is a reluctance of companies to go public. You see it in the IPO. Very few companies go IPO. There's a wealth of money to keep companies private. Companies are staying private. Companies are going private. And so I think the importance of, so doing a transformation is very, very hard in the public realm.
Did you face a lot of activism in Yahoo?
Yeah, that's my next comment. So I said boards matter and alignment with management matters. When I got there, we had an activist, Third Point. I have a great relationship with them, actually. And the comment I would make, and I've seen them and others do very well in a number of companies. So my comment would be not all activists are equal. Some are very helpful, very constructive. They're much more operationally focused. And so we had a very good relationship with them, and I know them well, and I've seen other activists at other major companies do very, very well. I'm not going to name them, but you know them. I've seen others that frankly come in with the same playbook over and over again. They're bottom fishers. They had, in my opinion, very little, if nothing, no value. Their playbook is, fire the CEO, cut costs, buy back stock, sell the company. I mean, that's basically, you never ever hear from some of these, what's your growth story, how to grow faster, how to invest faster. You never hear that. And so there's, you can probably get my hints as to who I think is good and who's not so good.
Did they contribute to the eventual buy?
Well, I think some activists do contribute a lot. Again, I think the first group of folks that we had in the company were very, very helpful. They brought on me, they brought on Marissa and so forth. I think without naming companies, I've seen other companies do quite well with activists involved and so forth. So I think some of them are very, very good, particularly when they come on in a friendly way. In other words, when they come on and say, we want to help, we agree with your strategy, but we think we can help accelerate. We bring some context and some background and so forth. I think that's very, very helpful. In a number of situations where activists have come into companies on basically a mutual basis, not an antagonistic basis, not a proxy fight, not a big public spat. And so those can be very, very helpful. The ones that I don't find helpful, want to do it in the public realm, want to write long letters, castigating the team, the management, the board. They fight you. They want to do it in the public world. I don't find that helpful. And I think that is a big issue. That is why we have so many of the companies today coming out with two classes of stock. I mean, you often wonder why that's happening. I've been involved with a lot of groups talking about that. But I think half the companies today going public have two classes of stock. Why? Because people don't want to be, involved with activists. Who wants to talk? Why does Mark Zuckerberg want to listen to an activist? Why does Google want to talk to an activist when you don't have to? So you see these companies that have two classes of stock, and it's going to continue because that's the way the world is. So if you want to change the world, the biggest issue today, in my opinion, is not Sarbanes-Oxley, which people talk about. It's not Dodd-Frank, which people talk about. Not all these other things. It is the activism going on today is causing companies to stay private or to go private.
Okay, people have questions. The mics are there and there. Please do step forward. I don't want to interrupt you. You were talking about PR and IR.
Yeah, I think one more thing. I think again, there's lessons learned, and I'm not saying we did everything well. One thing that people forget about Yahoo, the stock went up 4x while we were there. When I got there, the stock was 50 and change. Today, the stock, what we did is we split off the company, a spin-off, which we had hoped to do, which we couldn't get an agreement with the board. We had hoped to spin off the Yahoo company into a public company and the financial assets to another public company. The financial assets are another public company called ABBA, Altaba. But ABBA is the symbol. That stock was 69. I don't know what it is today, but 69 when I got there was 16. So it's over a 4x return. So everyone's highest stock price basically in the history of the company, other than like a 2-month window in 2000. So everyone's made money buying the stock. People forget, so a lot of it was our holding of Alibaba. The best investment ever made was Jerry Yang, investing $1 billion in Alibaba, which could have been worth over $200 billion had we stayed in. Unfortunately, the prior management sold about half of our stake, and then we were supposed to sell another half. We actually reduced that other half we were supposed to sell by 120 million shares, which is equivalent to about 15 billion of stock today. So there's a lot of things that we collectively did. Doesn't get a lot of press to help the stock price. But the PR and IR is really important. I think we could have done much better on that in terms of controlling the story and line. We let the story and line be told by others, and frankly, that was a mistake.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Given how intractable boards are, better to align management with the board or to, have a strong CEO try to craft the board in his vision?
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting. I'm on like 7 boards today, 4 publics, 3 privates. And one of the things that I get asked to join a number of boards, and one thing I've learned now is I'm going to look at very, very closely the board dynamics, how they work together, and how they work with management. You don't want to be, all friends, but I think to have a board that's very collegial, is very, very important. A board that works well together.
Did you have that at Yahoo?
No.
Come on, tell us.
No.
I want names.
We had, we had different folks that, we had different groups. I mean, the reality is with activists, he brought in his, board members, and we then had some other board members we brought in recently, and then we had some original board members. If you look at Yahoo, it had a constant changing the board. That made it very, very difficult to have alignment. This is a comment that I have. I want to grow. I want to help companies. So I won't come on. This is me personally. I'm not going to come on with an activist. I look out when I read the newspaper. I read my Wall Street Journal here. And I'm always perplexed when I follow and I see these activists come into companies and bring in some other board members. And I say, I don't know how you can be, involved with many of the activists. Some are different. Again, I have some activists that I think are very, very constructive. You can be associated with them. They're helpful. There's others that, frankly, I just say I want nothing to do with.
Ty Carson.
Yes, thank you. Your comments about Aqua Hire is kind of interesting because it'd be interesting to get some insight on how successful that really may have been. From an outside view, it was very hard to understand the strategy of Yahoo and where it was going. The story seemed to be changing, so it was kind of like watching the Titanic in slow motion because it didn't look like it was going to end well. And so the Aqua Hire seems to be interesting because I've been involved in a lot of those type of strategies over the years, and unless there's really a clear vision and there's a clear strategy and a clear upside, basically in the Aqua Hire is like, how many days do I have until I can check out? Whatever the contract was, whatever the keeping contingency was, it's 90 days, and I'm basically here just to look for my new job somewhere else.
Yeah, the reality is we track that very carefully. I remember I made the comment that 3 or 4 of our top leaders came from Aqua Hires. Adam Cahan, as an example. He's still there. Simon Califf, who's still there. He's running he's running all the media. Jeff Bonfort, he's running the email and search. These guys came from our Aqua Hires. So just the opposite of what you just said. These guys actually came from our Aqua Hires. They are still there. They're actually 2 of them are still there running. This is after Verizon took it over. So, so they didn't have the 90-day that you said, or 180 days. And it only works if you have an environment that they want to come in.
Yeah.
And so remember I talked about the culture before. We had a culture there under Marissa, and I think the world of her, that these folks really looked up to her, and she was one of them, and they were one of her, so to speak, in terms of how they thought. And so we kept probably 70-80% of the people that we brought into Aqua Hires actually stayed through when we sold the company. So we had a very good success rate there.
Wow, that's impressive because the external view didn't reflect that. So
and I would say it was a little bit of Titanic when we got there. We had 17,000 employees when we got there. We had 9 when we left, and it's probably, well, I know it's a lot less than that right now. The reality is we had too many different disparate products, and as mentioned, remember I mentioned before, 40% of our revenue came from products that did not exist when we started.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned how difficult it was to take something like Tumblr and monetize it. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what a Verizon would have to do now that it's acquired Yahoo to get the most out of the assets and the people that Yahoo brings to Verizon.
Well, I always hate to say too much about what they should do. I'm not part of it, but I would say the thing that we knew that we lacked is distribution. And so the way I look at so people say, how's Yahoo going to exist? The way I look at it is Google is so strong in search, and obviously Facebook is social, but we provide content. So you look content. So you look at news, sports, finance, lifestyles. Those are our core verticals. That's what we're very, very strong in. So the way to really succeed, in my opinion, is go long on those core areas. We had a very, very strong email, probably only second to Gmail in terms of users. We had very, very strong. We invested very heavily in our email. capability. And so, and then Verizon obviously has distribution. They have, I don't know, 100 million, whatever number of phones. So the ability to go and add that distribution capability on your phone, I don't have it here, but my phone's over there, but add, so as when you open up your phone, you see automatically email, or you see automatically news and sports are already preloaded. So the more you do to have preloaded, that's a big win. And so that is an opportunity for them. And then, scale matters. So the ability to combine Yahoo and AOL, and I'm not going to say other numbers other than Tim Armstrong has said, going from 10 billion to 20 billion and get to that level of scale, that's very, very important. So that's their opportunity to take that scale they have and add that to the distribution capability with Verizon being how strong they are as a mobile carrier. Now, that's what we didn't have. We didn't have that distribution capability. Others may have had an operating system, whether you're Microsoft or Google. We didn't have an operating system. So to be able to have the carrier connection and leverage that is something that could be very, very helpful in this. I think the challenge that I worry about, honestly, is public, because I haven't seen a mention of, other than maybe the hacks you mentioned earlier, of Yahoo since I left. I mean, so it's sort of, I worry about it being out of sight, out of mind. And there is a perspective, some people have this perspective, all press is good, because it keeps you it keeps your notice up, it keeps you in the realm of, people's minds and so forth. And so, see Yahoo, well, okay, let me go to Yahoo for news and sports, and you just think about it. So the more you lose that, I worry about it. So I think I think it's going to be very, very important to think about how they think about, in my opinion, again, this is my own opinion, how they think about brands between Oath, which is the name of the company they're using, and that's their decision, between Oath, Yahoo, and AOL and so forth, and then a number of different brands they have, and Huffington Post and so forth. So I think to think through the brand, because it's hard to put wood behind too many brands in terms of money. I think get much more in the press and doing more investor relations. I think that's going to be very, very important to get the name more out there, because again, I haven't seen the name of Yahoo out there. We were out every single day I was there in the last year or so, and since I left in mid-June, I've hardly seen the name at all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Only in the context that I'm seeing now in the form of kind of potential class action lawsuits and things going back again to the hack and how that may affect them. But it didn't feel, I mean, the Titanic reference, it didn't feel like you were rearranging deck chairs in the last sort of year or two before the takeover.
Again, I think, my opinion, which I would have liked to have seen personally, is if you go back a year before that, we tried to do what they call a forward spin on a tax-free basis. We needed, IRS approval. We didn't get it to do that, and so that would have been very, very successful for us, in my opinion, because we would have kept the core business as a tax-free entity, and that would have been a public entity. We would have kept the financial assets separately. When that didn't go through, we could have done a reverse spin. The board decided not to go down that path. But had we done the reverse spin, Yahoo would be a public company today. And frankly, then we could have even taken it private but independent, but then taken it private as well. We didn't go down that path. I wish we had, because I think the company, again, it's $5 billion. I go back to numbers. It's $5 billion in revenue, over 1 billion users, over 650 million mobile users, global reach. You go around the world, even though we're not that strong globally, outside the U.S., you go around it, we have phenomenal brand awareness. It's a company that people actually like. Many other companies, people sort of question whatever. It's hard to go to a consumer that does not like Yahoo, does not use Yahoo, does not think positively of Yahoo. And so we had great brand awareness, great brand acceptance, and I personally wish we had stayed independent, either private or public, because I think we could have made some noise out there.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your time. All the best, Ken.